So far, we had a look at some of the delegation that we developed ourselves. So we wrote our own protocols, we conformed the class to that, and then we use that to pass a message. Now, in this lesson, we're going to look at some of the delegations that exist in different classes in iOS. Almost every class in iOS has at least one delegation, and then some of them, they have a lot more than that. So let's have a look at those in Xcode. I'm going to go to Xcode, and I'm going to start a new project. iOS application, and this is actually a good time for us to take what we learned into an actual application. I'm going to go to a single view app. I'm going to leave it at Swift, and I'm going to say text field delegate Swift. And in here, I'm going to go ahead and say in my storyboard, I have one text field. That's the only thing that I want to have in here. Here's a text field, and I'm actually going to go ahead, do the same thing as usual, no borders. Make sure the background is something that we can actually view it. Make the text a little bit larger, have a placeholder saying, for instance, value, align it to center, and all of these things, you can do it on your own, whatever you feel like more comfortable. So the next thing is I'm gonna have to make an outlet for my text field. So same thing as before, assistant editor, and in my view controller class, drag this one and call it my text FLD. So far we haven't done anything that is different. We have made a text field and we have added it, and now I know, and you will know soon as well, that most outlets in your interface builder, they have built-in delegates, and you can call those delegates by doing either of these two things. Either hold the control button and drag them over your view controller, and in the window that pops, you could say outlet delegate, which means I'm delegating from my text field to this view controller. So let's do that. Or you could actually do it through the programming. I'm going to do it in both sides so we see both of them. So the first one was holding control and dragging over our view controller and saying delegate. That's one way of doing it. I'm actually going to go ahead and disconnect it so I can do it one more way. The other way was this. I'm going to go to my view controller. And in my view controller, I'm going to clean everything up like usual. And in my view did load, the moment the view loads, I'm going to say my text field dot delegate becomes self, becomes this one. Now, if you recall, anyone that we wanted to assign the delegate to, it had to conform to that delegation protocol, which I'm currently not doing that. So I'm going to go to my class view controller, superclass UI view controller, and I'm going to say UI text field delegate. So I'm conforming to UI text field delegate as well. So now my view controller can accept delegation methods from my text field. But what are those? What are the different functions or properties that we can use from this guy? Let's go ahead and Google it up. I'm going to go to my browser, say, give me UI text field delegate. And I'm going to look at the UI text field delegate, and soon enough we will learn better ways of finding these methods. But for now, I'm going to find those, and I'm going to see that in the delegation, editing stuff, I have text field should begin editing, text field did begin editing. So this one gets triggered the moment you start entering a value, or it says the one I'm looking for actually is something called text field should return. Let's read that up. And it says, ask the delegate if the text field should process the pressing of the return button. So whether when we hit the return button, something should happen or not. And I'm going to use that. So it is called text field should return. Let's go ahead to Xcode. And as long as you're programming in Swift, you can just type a little part of that code and it will automatically auto-complete it for you. So I'm going to say text field should, and it says, oh, should return. Is that the one you're looking for? And as you can see, the return of it is a Boolean. So I'm going to say return true. So yes, it has to do something, but what should it do? So let's go ahead and quickly talk about that. A very, very simple case of this would be this. I'm going to go to the storyboard. I'm going to select my text field. I'm going to change its return button to look like a done button. Even though this isn't really necessary, I like to do it so it kind of becomes more clear what we are doing. So our return key is a done key, and I'm going to say the moment the text field should return function is triggered, before you return true, do this. text field dot resign first responder. And I'm sure you can guess what this is going to do for us. This is going to essentially say every time you press the return button on this text field, get rid of the keyboard, and then yes, that should happen. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to say show me the keyboard by pressing on the text field. And if you don't see the keyboard, it's because your soft keyboard is not on. You have to go in here and press Command K. So if I have Command K in here, the keyboard disappears. If I hit Command K again, it appears. In testing purposes, doesn't really matter, but when you're using the simulator, keep in mind keyboard shows up here. So I'm gonna say, let's say hi and hit done, and it gets rid of the keyboard. Now you might be asking yourself, so what is this text field argument that is in here? That essentially calls the text field that has triggered this function. You can simply imagine that this may not be the only text field that you have in your interface. You might have two of those, and then depending on which one is doing something, you might want to do a different thing. In the next example, I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to go ahead in here. I'm going to use a different delegate function called text field should change, which is this, which essentially says, should I change the value that you're typing in a text field or not? Now, let me quickly explain what is this useful for. Imagine a situation like this, and we saw this sometime in the past, that we wanted to have a text field that we can only enter numeric values. So 3, 2, 4 would be valid values, but F wouldn't be. So we can actually use this function, text field should change character, to decide whether it should actually change or not. So practically by the end of this exercise, we should be able to do this. If I go in here and press 3, that should appear. But if I go and press F, that shouldn't appear. It should just be returned as a false value. So let's see how I'm going to do that. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get myself a little bit more space. And then I'm going to go ahead and say, this is the logic that I want to do. The logic is this. Let's get all non-numeric values. So these are things such as A, S, D, C, V, comma, dot, I don't know, star, and whatever. Anything that is non-numeric value that you can use, get by a keyboard. Then I'm going to say, let's get our string, the string we are trying to enter, and divide it by these guys. What does that mean? Let's say our string is this, those many numbers, and then HG, some random character, and then those many numbers. All right. If I go ahead and divide this string by the characters that are here, the non-numeric characters, let me call that one character. If I divide it by non-numeric character, I will have this. I will have the first part, which is that. I'm dividing by these guys, H, J, U, S, F, D, G. And if I had one more, percentage in here, so that would be the first part. And then I would have the next part, which is 4, 5, 6, which is that. And then I would have that last part, which is 78. So if I break my text against these dividers, the non-numeric characters, I will end up with this. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let's join all of these things together, which becomes, copy this, paste it there, all of them together. Then I'm going to say, compare the original text, this one, against this new one. If they are the same, it means I didn't have any non-numeric character. It means everything was numeric. But if they are not the same, it means that something has gone wrong and I have a non-numeric value and I shouldn't return true. So that's the logic of what I want to do. Let's go ahead and actually do that. The first thing I'm going to do is this. I'm going to say let's call it numbers becomes all of these guys, which is very simple. So we first get all the numbers, all the things that we would like to have, right? Then the next thing is I'm going to say let's call it remove character set. All right, so this is the character set that I would like to remove. and that's going to be an ns character set with characters in numbers. So that is my character set, but this is the actual character set of the numbers, not the ones I want to remove. So because I want to remove them, I'm going to say, well, you know what, get these guys and then do what we call inverted. So reverse it, get these guys and then find everyone who is not these guys. Because I could go ahead and manually try to type those, but it would be a very, very long set of characters. It would be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, all the way to Z, and then the capital letters of all of these things, and then every value that is non-numeric, such as these guys, so on and so forth. It would become a very, very long string, and it would be very tedious to find them. So instead, I said, let's get the numbers and invert them. Once I have the inverted version, I'm going to divide my string by them. So let's call it divide. And the string I want is this one, the input string that the text field is providing for me. So that's going to be very simple. I'm going to say, let's call this one split or separated. And my separated becomes a string dot component and separated by remove character set. So I'm going to separate it by those. So by now I've got all of these pieces separated, and by now I have this, that guy and that one and that one, because I'm separating against a character set which is anyone but these. So it will get rid of that part and that part. So then I'm going to go ahead and do what we suggested. I'm going to join them back to each other. So let's call this a step join, and in the join is actually going to be let's call it join the string. That becomes anything that we had here, separated dot joined, and then it says how do you want to join it with, and I want to join them using a separator. What is the separator? Nothing. I want to join them right one after another. I don't want to join them, for instance, by a space. If that was the case, it would become something like this. But I want to join them exactly the way they are, put them one after another. So I get that part done. And then the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to say, well, I have that one. Now, here's the if a string, that was the original one, is same as joined, which is essentially this comparison, then you have to return true. And else you have to return false. Now let's see quickly what we did. Once again, off the top. All right, I'm going to get rid of all of these. I'm going to say text field should change character in set is a method that gets called from the text field delegate. And it says every time you change something, I'm going to call this function. I'm going to fire this function, but it's going to be up to the return of it, whether I'm actually going to make that change or not. Now for me, I'm going to go ahead and say, these are the numbers. This is the character set built from those numbers. Invert it, so I get everybody who is not these guys. Get my text, a string that is received in here, separated by these characters. So if there is a number, just keep the numbers separated by those values. Combine them back with each other. And once you combine them back, and I think I didn't need to be like that, once you combine them back with each other, compare them against each other. If it was the same as it used to be at the very beginning, it means nothing changed. If it wasn't, return false. Now, I'm also going to change this little bit to a much easier syntax. I'm going to say, this is a true or false statement if a string is joined. And then if it is true, we're going to return true. If it is false, we're going to return false. So what if we just return this guy? That's it. We're going to say return a string, is it equal to joined? And if it is true, it's going to return true. If it is false, it's going to return false. Now let's see this app in practice. I'm going to load up the app in my simulator. And in here, we should see here. I'm going to boot up the keyboard. When I try the text values, nothing shows up. When I go to numeric ones, everything works. Anyone else, nothing happens. Only numeric values, the numbers can work. So we could actually combine this by saying my text field dot keyboard type is a UI keyboard type dot numeric pad or number pad or something like that. And of course, on the simulator, you cannot change the type of the keyboard, but on actual device, you could switch back to a different kind of keyboard. But here, we make sure our user absolutely enters numeric values. So that's about that, using the delegation and finding the kind of, functions that you have in a certain delegate and how you would use them. Like I said, towards the end of this section, in a few lessons from now, I will show you much easier ways of finding the delegate methods, what is available in there. In all fairness, a lot of it are things that we don't know. It's just simply that when you decide to do something and you come across an issue, then you think to yourself that, oh, there might be a delegate method that does something like that. For instance, there is another delegate method which I kind of forgot its name, but I can show it to you here. This is the paste delegate. It means what happens when something gets pasted to my text field. Do you want to, I don't know, pop a little window saying, like the one that you have on Safari on iPhone, that says the moment you paste something, it says, do you want to search for this? Or do you want to automatically run the search? Or a lot of apps that they allow you to enter text as authorization when they send you a SMS with a number. Then you enter the characters 1, 2, 3, 4. The moment you enter the fourth one, it automatically starts checking for the authentication. So based on that, you can do a lot of things, and a lot of times you wouldn't exactly know what is in a delegate. You have to go to the manual and to the help resources, read about them, and find out what you could do with them, or more importantly, if you have a situation, how you could fix it using any of these. So let's keep that up to here, and then we'll move on to the next lesson, which I think will do the same thing in Objective-C.